So what's the deal with the Vindertech Disintegrator? Does it shoot great balls of fire? Nah, not really. It shoots tiny balls of energy, which in itself is like really cool, but it is not in any way super high explosive power that you have with the Vindertech Disintegrator. But it is a very interesting shotgun that I'm going to be going through in this video and giving my thoughts about the best perks for the weapon, and with of course a little bit of demonstration. So hello guys, and welcome to another one of my Fortnite videos. This weapon here does not penetrate shields or riot shields, which means they're just gonna completely explode on them. But you can use them inside the shielded areas, which is pretty amazing because you can deal the area of effect damage in here. And this here is the Vindertech Disintegrator. This here is the first one that I ever got like a year ago or something. It has the old perks, which means I can go in and change them. And what you can see here is you can actually have this with affliction damage as the 6th perk. This is the one that I bought in the event store. It has snaring option as the 6th perk, and these are the perks that I got with it. It uses energy ammunition, which is horrible beyond insane in the game, and it is a shotgun class ranged weapon. So let's look a little bit more into this here. It has a default magazine size of 15 shells, but the very important thing to remember is that it fires 3 shots at a time and has a 6-second reload time. So it may have 15 like rounds in the mag, but you use 3 each and every time, so it is actually only 5 shots that you have. I kept it at level 20 because, as you can see, these perks are not active, so I'm just going to be boosting up the weapon here so you can see as they unlock how it affects the different things on the weapon. And of course we're going to be looking into the obsidian versus shadow shard for it. Pretty much default stuff here. You get more impact, you get more damage when you select obsidian. With shadow shard you get like lower fire rate, lower durability, but even more impact and even more damage. Obsidian for weapons is pretty obsolete in the game right now, but there was a time when we lost a lot of weapon durability when we actually died with the weapons, and then it was a nice thing to have a higher durability on the weapons. So that is pretty much like the default stuff about the weapon. You fire shotgun type class projectiles, which are energy ammunition, crazy reload time, crazy ammo consumption, which means that in my opinion it's a good idea to have an increased magazine size for this weapon because the reload time is insane and you fire 3 shots every single time. So personally I would prefer affliction damage with the 6th perk, but I didn't have it on this one, and I wanted to keep my vanilla one as it was, so I figured I would go in with this one. And these are like the perk options that you can choose from. You cannot change the element on it, but you can select from crit damage, crit rating, damage, and of course fire rate and reload speed on the 1st perk. And reload speed might be good since we have a very slow reload time on the weapon. So I mean, you can go with max size or reload speed. I think that is pretty like meh on it. Weapon stability I think is pretty useless on a shotgun class weapon, but we can select durability, max size or reload speed in the 2nd changeable perk here as well. So this is one of those pretty meh kind of things that we're gonna look a little bit more into it, deeper into the video. So these are like the options here. In the one where I actually have magazine size selected already, and it's probably not where I want to have it because I can select crit rating, crit damage, or damage in here instead, and then move my mag size somewhere else. And in this perk here, damage to afflicted would have been amazing with an affliction weapon. And we can go monsters, mist monsters, we can go slowed, snared, or stunned. And since I have slowed and snared on this weapon, it's probably like the best thing for me. But if you're playing a constructor with electrified floors, if you're playing a soldier using debilitating shots so that you actually afflict targets, then it might be a really good idea just to have additional damage to afflicted targets there. So this here is the weapon as it was, like my base weapon that I bought. Took it in for a spin with my Outlander. This is my normal gaming setup. I wanted to find out with the perks maxed out as I bought the weapon with my default hero setup, what kind of a weapon is it? And as you can see, it is beyond horrible. This is actually where the weapon should shine. Cluster of opponents. We even have 2 different elements here, which is good when you're using an energy weapon because you deal the same amount of damage to all types of elemental husks. And it was horrible. Like completely horrible. Like my towers would have taken these out in a split. I mean my bear, stair, crazy tower, or even my shock tower, my hover turrets. So it was unreally bad for me to play with my normal Outlander. And as you can see, the projectile actually moves so slow that like the husks can move away from it. So it is not a weapon that you want to be using the way you normally play, and it is definitely not a smasher weapon, not in any way. The grind to take out an element smasher is just unreal. I decided to cut almost all of it out because we're talking minutes of non-stop grinding, and after like almost 2 minutes of non-stop shooting it, I finally got it to get a knockback because we have almost no impact damage on this weapon here against these smashers. It is unreal. So you can take out smashers. It is not what the weapon is designed for, but as a power level crazy player in a power level 100 mission, the most important thing for me is often smashers because everything else dies to traps or abilities. So after having played with a weapon like that, I went in here and I decided to change the damage to afflicted perk to something else because I'm not dealing affliction damage, and I rarely even play soldier or constructor these days. So this was the most important thing for me with this weapon here, with this setup, was to remove that perk and make it something else. So what I did was that I selected damage to slowed and snared because this weapon slows and snares, which is actually pretty cool for a weapon like this, I feel, even though affliction would be better in my opinion. So the next thing that I did was to remove the crit damage because I only have a 10% crit chance here, and I don't want to have critical damage on a weapon with a small area and low impact damage on it. So I went with 30% additional damage here because the weapon needs to actually deal enough damage for it to count, regardless of whether or not we're talking one opponent or multiple opponents. So that was really important for me. Where I have weapon stability, which is completely useless I feel for this weapon here, I decided to go in and select magazine size here because I felt the magazine size was pretty okay with the setup that I had. I do have a magazine size here already, but the options that I have where I have weapon stability, they're all pretty meh. So it was reload speed or magazine size, so I decided I only wanted one magazine size extra perk on the weapon, and I took it in this like utility kind of slot and then replaced the existing magazine size perk on the weapon with something different. And I was like really thinking about what I felt would be the right thing for me to do here, because do I want crit at all on this weapon? And I decided no, I don't. I'm just going pure damage on it because when you're dealing area damage, it is of course nice to have a lot of opponents that may get a crit damage. They're going to be rolled individually. But on the other hand, since this is mainly a creep control weapon, I needed to deal higher base damage so that I was sure the low health minions that I would be hitting with it would die. This is not something you're going to be taking out smashers with. It's not something you're going to be taking out in general husky husks with. It's something that you may be shooting a husky husk, but it is because you want the creep around it to die or you want to damage an entire huge area. So with my new improved weapon with a much higher base damage on it, actually 2 times 30% and 45% for every other shot than the first one, we're talking 105% additional damage, and of course it made a huge difference. Even playing with my normal setup, this is my Outlander, with my outlanding setup, as in gaming outlanding, not farming. So it is focused on ability damage and it is focused on teddy towers, and look at this stuff here. Things are just working, and of course taking out a exploder here once again just to show you guys that this weapon takes out exploders. It ignites propane flasks even if like they just need to be in the area where this projectile explodes. So you do not want to be using this in an area where you have propane waves incoming unless you don't have anything in your mind getting blown up, because it is crazy like that. It's gonna ignite anything that can be ignited with it. So like that's the thing. But besides that, getting my weapon up like this was really amazing. The setup that I wanted to show you guys here is with the Outlander using Energized as the support option. We talked about that in the last video. And of course with the Raider Raptor, this is probably the best I can do with this weapon. You can also choose another Raider for the support if you want increased critical rating. And the reason why the Raider here is a little bit meh, but like at the same time okay, you get 10% additional damage for a ranged weapon, which is cool. You have the debilitating shots, which means you can deal up to additional 15% damage, and you're going to be affecting a lot of opponents with debilitating shots from the area, so that is pretty cool. The shell shock option gives you 24% additional damage as well, so that's 34 plus 15 potentially. So that is like a lot of additional damage, but the main thing is of course the critical blast, dealing a lot more damage when you critically hit with a shotgun. So he is really focused, the Raider class, on crits, and I don't feel this is a really good crit weapon, but please do correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. So besides that, he also has the war cry, gives you additional damage with ranged weapons, 45%, and of course increased attack speed. Like a lot of soldiers has this. The only thing extra you really get by using this hero, the Raider, is that you get 24% additional damage with shotguns because the critical is a bit meh. I decided to also take explosive rounds in the tactical, which means that after taking out 10 opponents, we're gonna get an explosion. So we are firing a projectile that explodes, takes out a lot of opponents, and in doing so creates a tactical bonus explosive rounds. And I thought that was pretty cool. My favorite setup to play with this weapon was to have this Raven here in the tactical, because I mean, it is insane explosions on top of explosions, and that just made the weapon a whole lot better. So for this weapon here, this is probably the ideal setup, even though I would personally select another primary hero, because the 24% additional damage and 70% crit damage, as you can see, this is what it results to, is not the big thing here. It is more the war cry and the soldier ability on top of that. But here you can really see the weapon in action going completely crazy. Now I am effectively like one-shotting all normal counter husks within the area. I am one-shotting even these crazy lobbers, which I should be, but it took me 3 shots when I started, so it is a lot more damage. And even taking out smashers now is much more doable. It's still a bit of a grind. It's not a high single projectile damage weapon, but everything was much more enjoyable with this setup and the new perks. And after playing with the weapon for a few games just with my normal setup, it works like a charm. You can find the weapon under the Vindertech category in ranged and crystal ranged weapons. And the very cool thing is of course that you can take this shotgun that has explosive rounds in it and give it to a shotgunner defender, and that is also very fun to play with. All in all, should you buy this weapon? I don't really feel so. It is a fun weapon. It is a different type of weapon. If you give it to a defender, it uses less ammunition, and ammunition is key because we're talking energy ammo, so that is of course important to keep in mind. That was what I had to share in this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, thank you very much for watching, and yeah, should you buy it? Only if you really want to have it, because it's a fun and unique weapon. It's in no way game changing, and I feel even like normal default shotguns will do you better in terms of just dealing with opponents, and most heroes have abilities for crowd control that are much more efficient than what we had here.